Hello, hello, hello. My name is Matt. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a third-year student at UCLA. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about a really hard question that you might have, which is, should I use React in my hackathon project? Hopefully I'll be able to answer that question for you today. And to answer that, I want to talk to you about a few different things, about what React is, why it exists, and what you might want to consider instead. And then I'll give you, the answer to the question. But first, let's talk a little bit about what React actually is. And on their website, they say something like, React is a JavaScript library and it's used to build user interfaces. It's declarative, it's component-based, and you learn it once and you write it everywhere. And I don't know about you, but I have no idea what those words mean. So let's go through them. React is a JavaScript library. That means it's a bunch of code that's written in JavaScript, which is the programming language that powers the entire internet. Writing code with React is mostly like writing code in JavaScript. React is used for building user interfaces, and that means that we use it to build everything that the user interacts with on a website, from clicking buttons to see more content, to loading an animation or a video, to all kinds of data-based interactions. And React is declarative. In other words, that means that we spend time describing what we want our page to look like and when data needs to update the stuff on the page. We don't actually have to write code that updates our page. And React is component-based. We'll spend a bit of time on this in a moment, but basically we break down a complicated website into small, reusable, and easy to understand components. And that makes it a lot easier for us to create complicated web applications. And finally, you learn it once and you write it everywhere. If you learn it right the first time, you can use it with all sorts of different technologies. It doesn't really matter what your backend is. You can even use it with other front-end JavaScript libraries. And if you use this thing called React Native, you can even use it to also make mobile apps, which is super, super convenient. The last thing I'll mention is you'll often hear about using React with Node and Npm, which are these two JavaScript-related parts of the ecosystem that make it easier to write JavaScript applications. And we actually have a whole other video on Node and Npm. So if you want to, take a look. I think it'll show somewhere up there. Hopefully you should have a very top-level understanding of what React actually is. But let's talk a little bit about why it exists. And to do that, we're going to go through an actual website and kind of walk through the problem and the solution that React kind of provides. And so just to give you some context, React was made by a team at Facebook when they realized that making Facebook the website is really, really complicated. And we're going to take a look at Twitter instead because BTS is on Twitter. So let's take a look. You can see here, this is BTS's Twitter feed. And it's BTS, it's cool. But something we can note is that writing a website like Twitter is actually really, really hard. And computer scientists don't like dealing with hard things. So let's try to make it a little bit easier and break it down into smaller, easier problems to solve. And immediately we can notice that the Twitter feed has a bunch of tweets, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works. And it would be kind of cool if instead of having to write out every single position of every single tweet, and all the code for each tweet and writing it for every single tweet on the BTS homepage. If we could create one tweet component, right, or tweet element, and that just kind of encapsulates everything we need to define a tweet. And this is what React does for us. It says, hey, if you can break up your page into small, easy to use components, we can help you glue everything together. And this level of abstraction is really, really popular in software engineering. And tweets aren't the only thing that show up on our feed, right? If you look at the notification section as well, there also are a bunch of tabs. And I want to notice and point out something that's kind of similar between the tweets and the tabs. Each tweet and tab, they share characteristics with other tweets and other tabs, right? Each tweet has a username, has the body of the tweet, and how many likes it has. And similarly, a tab, you can click on each tab and something happens. It takes you to a page maybe. There's an icon, there's some text, there's maybe a notification badge. Being able to identify what creates this component and then being able to write that down in code is most of the problem when you're developing with React. Let's kind of zoom in and talk a little bit about one other feature of React, which is inheritance and composition. And here, we're going to look at one tweet. One tweet itself actually also has its own components, right? We can break down the tweet into a profile picture, into the username, the content of the tweet, the options button, all the icons. And the icons themselves, are like buttons with an icon, and that's a whole different component set too. And when you click on the buttons, right, there's interactivity. When you click on the like button, a little heart pops up, right? Or if you click on the options button, you get a little drop-down menu. All of this is more components inside of components, and sometimes these components are interactive. This kind of sounds like it might be a headache for you to write out, but React deals with all of this really easily outside of the box. And this is really the core of React, breaking down a really, really big and complex web page into really small, easily digestible and maintainable components. And that's why React exists. It makes doing this entire process a lot easier. And obviously there are other reasons why React exists, but they're usually more technical, so we're not going to really dive into those here. But if you are interested in that, I'll link some resources in the description of this video. You can go check those out. The last quick question I'll answer before answering the actual question is, what could I use instead of React? And I'll keep this pretty brief. There's actually a lot of options for you. So first, I want to say out the gate, you don't need to use React to make a website. You can make a website with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. No libraries required. And this is how most of the web is created. And this is also how I make a lot of simple websites. So this is great if your hackathon project doesn't really rely that much on having a website, or there's not that much interactivity. If you want to reuse components a lot, but you don't really care that much about interactivity, you can use what's called a static site generator. And these are really great for blogs, right? Where you have, lots of posts with similar components, but you're not really clicking on anything. You're just kind of reading the content. And some examples are here. React also has many direct competitors in what's called like the model view library space. I'm not going to really go into depth with these, but there are quite a few other ones like Angular, Vue, Svelte, and Ember. And they're all written in JavaScript. They're all kind of have their own little quirks, and they're all cool in their own right. There's also frameworks that are actually built on top of React, and these kind of offer a higher level API or kind of do more work than just React for your websites. And so examples of these are like Gatsby and Next.js. And I want to say between all of those options of competitors and libraries built on top of React, it seems kind of confusing, right? But in the grand scheme of things, of course they're different. But for a hackathon, there's actually not that big of a difference, especially if you're not really delving into the weeds of these apps. So my advice to you here is, if you know your app is a little complex and it's going to be interactive, just pick one of these. Pick React, because we have these videos, or pick another one that sounds cooler or has a cooler logo, and just give it a shot. We're at a hackathon. We're kind of here to learn. And that's a good segue to answering the actual question. So should you use React in your app? It depends, right? If your project is interactive, maybe React is better. And if it's not, maybe it's not. If you don't have any experience with JavaScript, React's going to be a bit harder to learn. And if maybe someone else on your team does, maybe then it's a great natural choice there. But in the grand scheme of things, I just want to say that a hackathon is a great place to learn new skills. So that's something like React. And don't let being new to React or new to web development or JavaScript, be a barrier stopping you from trying it out. We want to see you grow as a hacker and as a student and as, someone in life. So don't worry about React being, a perfect fit for your project, or becoming a React expert, or knowing how to differentiate React from Angular and Vue and Svelte. If React sounds cool, I think you should just go for it. The last thing I'll say is, if you do pick React, we have a lot of mentors at the hackathon, including me, who've used React before and are more than happy to help you debug your app or figure out how to design this component or make this part of your web app. And so if that's the case, React is a great choice. You can always slide in our DMs to find out more. If you're interested in learning more about React and how to use it, you can take a look at the rest of the tutorials that we've uploaded. I walk you through how to make a React app from scratch, even if you don't have any web dev experience before. I hope you enjoyed this mini workshop, and I hope it helped you with your hacking. If you've got any questions about the presentation at all, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be at the hackathon, but you can also send me an email, or you can find me on GitHub. And yeah, that's it. Good luck with your hackathon. I'm super excited to see all the projects that you'll make with React. Peace. This video wouldn't be possible without the wonderful support of my friends at QWER Hacks, and also the wonderful help from our friends at ACM Hack, who made those images that I played during this presentation. If you're interested, I've also credited in the description a README that outlines the script for this video, and on top of that, a few other resources that I've used to teach React in the past. But yeah, that's it. Good luck hacking.